standing on edge, one side carved intricately in vines and leaves. Egwene's throat tightened. Suddenly she knew why Liandrin had brought lanterns, and she did not like what she knew. She heard Nynaeve whisper, "A Waygate." They both remembered the ways all too well. "We did it once," she told herself as much as Nynaeve. "We can do it again. If Rand and the others need us, we have to help them. That's all there is to it." "Is that really—" Min began in a choked voice and could not finish. "A Waygate," Elaine breathed. "I did not think the ways could be used any longer. At least I did not think their use was allowed." Liandrin had already dismounted and plucked the trefoil of Endosura leaf out of the carving. Like two huge doors woven of living vines, the gates were swinging open, revealing what appeared to be a dull, silvery mirror that gave their reflections back dimly. "You do not have to come," Liandrin said. "You can wait here for me, safely enclosed by the fence until I come for you. Or perhaps the Black Ajah will find you before anyone else." Her smile was not pleasant. Behind her, the Waygate came open to its fullest and stopped. "I did not say I wouldn't come," Elaine said, but she gave the shadowed woods a lingering look. "If we are going to do this," Min said hoarsely, "then let's do it." She was staring at the Waygate, and Egwene thought she heard her mutter, "The light burn you, Rand al'Thor." "I must go last," Liandrin said. "All of you in. I will follow." She was eyeing the woods now, too, as if she thought someone might be following them. "Quickly! Quickly!" Egwene did not know what Liandrin expected to see, but if anyone at all came, they would probably stop them from using the Waygate. "Rand, you wool-headed idiot," she thought. "Why can't you just once get yourself into some kind of trouble that doesn't force me to act like the heroine in a story?" She dug her heels into Bella's flanks, and the shaggy mare, restive from too much time in a stable, leaped forward. "Slowly!" Nynaeve shouted, but it was too late. Egwene and Bella surged toward their own dull reflections. Two shaggy horses' touched noses appeared to flow into each other. Then Egwene was merging into her own image with an icy shock. Time seemed to stretch out, as if the cold crept over her by the one hair at a time, and every hair took minutes. Suddenly, Bella was stumbling in pitch blackness, moving so fast the mare almost pitched over on her head. She caught herself and stood trembling as Egwene dismounted hurriedly, feeling the mare's legs in the dark to see if she had been hurt. She was almost glad of the dark, to hide her crimson face. She knew that time as well as distance were different the other side of a Waygate. She had moved before thinking. There was only the blackness around her in every direction, except for the rectangle of the open Waygate, like a window of smoked glass when seen from this side. It let no light in, the black seemed to press right up against it, but through it Egwene could see the others, moving by the slowest increments like figures in a nightmare. Nynaeve was insisting on handing around the pole lanterns and lighting them. Liandrin was acceding with a bad grace, apparently insisting on speed. When Nynaeve came through the Waygate, leading her gray mare slowly, ever so slowly, Egwene almost ran to hug her, and at least half of her feeling was for the lantern Nynaeve carried. The lantern made a smaller pool of light than it should have. The darkness pressed against the light, trying to force it back into the lantern, but Egwene had begun to feel that darkness pressing against her, as if it had weight. Instead, she contented herself with saying, "Bella's all right, and I did not break my neck the way I deserved to." Once there had been light along the ways before the taint on the power with which they had first been made, the taint of the Dark One on saidin, had begun to corrupt them. Nynaeve thrust the pole of the lantern into her hands and turned to pull another from under her saddle girth. "As long as you know you deserve to," she murmured. "Then you didn't deserve to." Suddenly she chuckled. "Sometimes I think it was sayings like that more than anything else that created the title of wisdom. Well, here's another. You break your neck and I'll see it mended just so I can break it again." It was said lightly, and Egwene found herself laughing too, until she recalled where she was. Nynaeve's amusement did not last long either. Min and Elaine came through the waygate hesitantly, leading their horses and carrying lanterns, obviously expecting to find monsters waiting at the least. They looked relieved at first to find nothing but darkness, but the oppressiveness of it soon had them shifting nervously from foot to foot. Leandrin replaced the Avendosora leaf and rode through the closing waygate leading the packhorse. Leandrin did not wait for the gate to finish closing, but tossed the lead line of the packhorse to Min without a word, and started along a white line, dimly made out by the light of her lantern, leading into the ways. The floor seemed to be stone, eaten and pitted by acid. Egwene scrambled hurriedly onto Bella's back, but she was no quicker to follow the Aes Sedai than anyone else. There seemed to be nothing in the world except the rough floor under the horses' hooves. Straight as an arrow, the white line led through the dark to a large stone slab covered with Ogier script inlaid in silver. The same poking that marked the floor also broke the script in places. "Guiding," Elaine murmured, twisting in her saddle to look around uneasily. "Elida taught me a little about the ways. She would not say much. Not enough," she added glumly. "Or maybe too much." Calmly, Leandrin compared the guiding with a parchment, then stuffed it back into a pocket of her cloak before Egwene could get a look. Their lantern's light stopped abruptly rather than fading out at the edges, but it was enough for Egwene to see a thick stone balustrade eaten away in places as the Aes Sedai led them away from the guiding. An island, Elaine called it. The darkness made judging the island's size difficult, but Egwene thought it might be 100 paces across. Stone bridges and ramps pierced the balustrade, each with a stone post beside it marked with a single line in Ogier script. The bridges seemed to arch out into nothing. The ramps led up or down. It was impossible to see more than the beginning of any of them as they rode past. Pausing only to eye the stone posts, Leandrin took a ramp that led down, and quickly there was nothing but the ramp and the darkness. A dampening silence hung over everything. Egwene had the feeling that even the clatter of the horses' hooves on the rough stone did not travel very far beyond the light. Down and down the ramp ran, curving back on itself, until it reached another island, with its broken balustrade between bridges and ramps, its guiding that Leandrin compared with her parchment. The island seemed like solid stone, just as the first one had. Egwene wished she was not sure that the first island was directly over their heads. Nynaeve spoke up suddenly, voicing Egwene's thoughts. Her voice sounded steady, but she paused to swallow in the middle of it. It might be," Elaine said faintly. Her eyes rolled upwards and quickly dropped again. "Elida says the rules of nature do not hold in the ways. At least, not the way they do outside." "Right," Min muttered, then raised her voice. "How long do you mean us to stay in here?" The Aes Sedai's honey-colored braids swung as she turned to regard them. "Until I take you out," she said flatly. "The more you bother me, the longer that will be." She bent back to studying the parchment and the guiding. Egwene and the others fell silent. Leandrin pushed on from guiding to guiding, by ramps and bridges that seemed to run unsupported through the endless dark. The Aes Sedai paid very little heed to the rest of them, and Egwene found herself wondering whether Leandrin would turn back to search if one of them fell behind. The others perhaps had the same thought, for they all rode bunched tightly on the dark mare's heels. Egwene was surprised to realize that she still felt the attraction of saidar, both the presence of the female half of the true source and the desire to touch it, to channel its flow. Somehow she had thought the shadow's taint on the ways would hide it from her. She could sense that taint after a fashion. It was faint and had nothing to do with saidar, but she was sure that reaching for the true source here would be like baring her arm to foul, greasy smoke in order to reach a clean cup. Whatever she did would be tainted. For the first time in weeks, she had no trouble at all in resisting the attraction of saidar. It was well into what would have been night in the world outside the ways when, on an island, Leandrin abruptly dismounted and announced that they would halt for supper and sleep, and that there was food on the packhorse. "Parcel it out," she said, not bothering to assign the task. It will take us the better part of 2 days to reach Tomon Head. I would not have you arrive hungry if you were too foolish not to bring food yourselves. Briskly she unsaddled and hobbled her mare, but then she sat down on her saddle and waited for one of them to bring her something to eat. Elaine took Leandrin her flatbread and cheese. The Aes Sedai made it obvious that she did not want their company, so the rest of them ate their bread and cheese a little apart from her, sitting on their saddles drawn close together. The darkness beyond their lanterns made a poor sauce. After a time, Egwene said, "Leandrin Sedai, what if we encounter the Black Wind?" Min mouthed the word questioningly, but Elaine gave a squeak. "Moiraine Sedai said it could not be killed or even hurt very much, and I can feel the taint on this place waiting to twist anything we do with the power." "You will not so much as think of the source unless I tell you to," Leandrin said sharply. "Why, if one such as you tried to channel here in the ways, you might well go as mad as a man. You have not the training to deal with the taint of those men who made this. If the Black Wind appears, I will deal with it." She pursed her lips, studying a lump of white cheese. "Moiraine does not know so much as she thinks." She popped the cheese into her mouth with a smile. "I do not like her," Egwene muttered, low enough to make sure the Aes Sedai could not hear. "If Moiraine can work with her," Nynaeve said quietly, "so can we. Not that I like Moiraine any better than I do Leandrin, but if they're meddling with Rand and the others again—" She fell silent, hitching her cloak up. The darkness was not cold, but it seemed as if it should be. "What is this Black Wind?" Min asked. When Elaine had explained, with a great deal of what Elaida had said and what her mother had said, Min sighed. "The pattern has a great deal to answer for. I don't know that any man is worth this." "You did not have to come," Egwene reminded her. "You could have gone at any time. No one would have tried to stop you leaving the tower." "Oh, I could have wandered off," Min said wryly. "As easily as you or Elaine. The pattern doesn't much care what we want. Egwene, what if, after all you are going through for him, Rand doesn't marry you? What if he marries some woman you've never seen before? Or Elaine? Or me? What then?" Elaine chortled. "Mother would never approve." Egwene was silent for a time. Rand might not live to marry anyone, and if he did, she could not imagine Rand hurting anyone. Not even after he's gone mad? There had to be some way to stop that, some way to change it. Aes Sedai knew so much, could do so much. If they could stop it, why don't they? The only answer was because they could not, and that was not the one she wanted. She tried to put lightness in her voice. "I don't suppose I will marry him. Aes Sedai seldom do marry, you know. But I would not set my heart on him if I were you, or you, Elaine. I do not think—" Her voice caught, and she coughed to cover it. "I do not think he will ever marry. But if he does, I wish well to whoever ends up with him, even one of you." She thought she sounded as if she meant it. "He is stubborn as a mule and wrong-headed to a fault, but he is gentle." Her voice shook, but she managed to turn the quaver into a laugh. "However much you say you do not care," Elaine said, "I think you'd approve less than Mother would. He is interesting, Egwene. More interesting than any man I've ever met, even if he is a shepherd. If you are silly enough to throw him away, you will have only yourself to blame if I decide to face down you and Mother both. It would not be the first time the Prince of Andor had no title before he wed. But you won't be that silly, so don't try to pretend you will. No doubt you will choose the Green Ajah and make him one of your warders. The only Greens I know with only one warder are married to them." Egwene made herself go along with it, saying if she did become a Green, she would have 10 warders. Min watched her, frowning, and Nynaeve watched Min thoughtfully. They all fell silent by the time they changed into more suitable clothes for traveling from their saddlebags. It was not easy, keeping spirits up in that place. Sleep came slowly to Egwene, fitfully, and it was filled with bad dreams. She did not dream of Rand, but of the man whose eyes were on fire. His face was not masked this time, and it was horrible with almost healed burns. He only looked at her and laughed, but that was worse than the dreams that followed. The dreams of being lost in the ways forever, the ones where the black wind was chasing her. She was grateful when the toe of Leandrin's riding boot dug into her ribs to waken her. She felt as if she had not slept at all. Leandrin pushed them hard through the next day, or what passed for day, with only their lanterns for a sun, not letting them stop for sleep until they were swaying in their saddles. Stone made a hard bed, but Leandrin roused them ruthlessly after a few hours, hardly waiting for them to mount before riding on. Ramps and bridges, islands and guidings. Egwene saw so many of them in that pitch dark that she lost count. She had long since lost any count of hours or of days. Leandrin allowed only brief halts to eat and rest the horses, and the darkness weighed down on their shoulders. They slumped in their saddles like sacks of grain, except for Leandrin.
I'm listening to,
seemed unaffected by tiredness or the dark.
it's still part of the Wheel of
She was as fresh as she
Time.
had been back in the White
It's,
Tower, and as cold.
let's
She would
see.
not let anyone
think the
glimpse
Great
the
Hunt.
parchment she compared to the guidings, stuffing it away with a curt, "It is nothing you would understand," when Nynaeve asked. And then, while Egwene blinked
Yeah, it's the
wearily,
Great Hunt.
Leandrin
It's
was
almost
riding away
done,
from the
too.
guiding, not toward another bridge or ramp, but down a
How you
pitted white
doing,
line that
Trizit?
led off into the darkness. Egwene stared at her friends, and then they all hurried to follow. Ahead, by the light of her lantern, the Aes Sedai was already removing the Avendasora leaf from the carvings on a waygate. "We are here," Leandrin said, smiling. "I
Let's
have
do
brought you at
that.
last to where you must go." Chapter 40.
Let me put some in there first.
Egwene dismounted as the waygate opened, and when Leandrin motioned them through, she led the shaggy mare carefully out. Even so, she and Bella both stumbled in brush flattened by the opening waygate as they suddenly seemed to be moving even more slowly. A screen of dense shrubs had surrounded and hidden the waygate. There were only a few trees close by, and the morning breeze ruffled foliage with a little more color than the leaves had had in Tar Valon. Watching her friends emerge after her, she had been standing there a good minute before she became aware that others were already there, just out of sight on the other side of the gates. When she did notice them, she stared uncertainly. They were as odd a group as she had ever seen, and she had heard too many rumors of the war on Tomon Head. Armored men, at least 50 of them, with overlapping steel plates down their chests and dull black helmets shaped like insects' heads, sat their saddles or stood beside their horses, staring at her and the emerging women, staring at the waygate, muttering among themselves. The only bareheaded man among them, a tall, dark-faced, hook-nosed fellow standing with a gilded and painted helmet on his hip, looked astonished at what he was seeing. There were women with the soldiers, too. Two wore plain, dark gray dresses and wide silver collars, and stood staring intently at those coming out of the waygate, each with another woman close behind her as if ready to speak into her ear. Two other women, standing a little apart, wore wide, divided skirts that came well short of their ankles, and panels embroidered with forked lightning bolts on their bosoms and skirts. Oddest of all was the last woman, reclining on a palanquin borne by 8 muscular, bare-chested men in baggy black trousers. The sides of her scalp were shaved, so that only a wide crest of black hair remained to fall down her back. A long, cream-colored robe worked in flowers and birds on blue ovals was carefully arranged to show her skirts of pleated white, and her fingernails were an inch long, the first 2 on each hand lacquered blue. "Leandrin Sedai?" Egwene asked uneasily. "Do you know who these people are?" Her friends fingered their reins as if wondering whether to mount and run, but Leandrin replaced the Avendasora leaf and stepped forward confidently as the waygate began to close. "The High Lady Siroth?" Leandrin said, making it halfway between a question and statement. The woman on the palanquin nodded fractionally. "You are Leandrin." Her speech was slurred, and it took Egwene a moment to understand. "Aes Sedai," Siroth added, with a twist to her lips, and a murmur rose among the soldiers. We must be done here quickly, Leandrin. There are patrols, and it would not do to be found. You would enjoy the attentions of the seekers for truth no more than I. I mean to be back in Falma before Turak knows I'm gone. What are you talking about? Nynaeve demanded. What is she talking about, Leandrin? Leandrin laid a hand on Nynaeve's shoulder and one on Egwene's. These are the two of whom you were told, and there is another. She nodded toward Elaine. She is the daughter heir of Andor. The two women with the lightning on their dresses were approaching the party in front of the waygate. They carried coils of some silvery metal in their hands, Egwene noticed, and the bare-headed soldier came with them. He did not put a hand near the sword hilt sticking up above his shoulder, and he wore a casual smile, but Egwene still watched him narrowly. Leandrin gave no sign of agitation, otherwise Egwene would have jumped onto Bella right then. Leandrin Sedai, she said urgently. Who are these people? Are they here to help Rand and the others too? The hook-nosed
Hey,
man
D-Man, how
suddenly
you doing?
seized Min and Elaine by the scruffs
Oh,
of
it's
their
not going
necks,
too
and
bad.
in the next
Can't
instant
complain,
everything
man.
seemed to happen at once. The man yelled a curse and a woman screamed, or perhaps more than one woman. Egwene could not be sure. Abruptly the breeze was a gale that whipped away Leandrin's angry shouts in clouds of dirt and leaves and made the trees bend and groan. Horses reared and whinnied shrilly, and one of the men reached out and fastened something around Egwene's neck. Cloak flapping like a sail,
What system
Egwene
do you
braced
play
against
on,
the wind
D-Man?
and tugged at what felt like a collar of smooth metal. It would not budge. Under her frantic fingers it felt all of one piece, though she knew it had to have some kind of clasp. The silvery coils the woman had carried now trailed over Egwene's shoulder, their other end joining a bright bracelet on the woman's left wrist. Balling her fist tightly, Egwene hit the woman as hard as she could, right in her eye, and staggered and fell to her knees herself, head ringing. It felt as if a large man had struck her in the face.
The switch is,
When she could see straight once
well, it's
more,
one
the wind
system I
had
play
died.
on.
A number of horses wandered loose, Bella and Elaine's mare among them, and some of the soldiers were cursing and picking themselves up off the ground. Leandrin was calmly brushing dust and leaves from her dress. Min knelt, supporting herself with her hands, groggily trying to rise further. The hook-nosed man stood over her, his hand dripping blood.
Oh yeah,
Min's
switching light.
knife lay just out of her reach, the blade stained red along one side. Nynaeve and Elaine were nowhere to be seen, and Nynaeve's mare was gone too. So were some
I think
of the
my
soldiers
brother,
and one of the pairs
Trizit,
of women.
actually has,
The other two were still there,
the switch
and
light.
Egwene could see now that they were linked by a silver cord, just like the one that still joined her to the woman standing over her. That woman was rubbing her cheek as she squatted beside Egwene. There was a bruise already coming up around her left eye. With long dark hair and big brown eyes, she was pretty, and perhaps as much as 10 years older than Nynaeve. Your first lesson, she said emphatically. There was no animosity in her voice, but what almost sounded like friendliness. I will not punish you further this time, since I should have been on guard with a newly caught Damani. Know this. You are a Damani, a leashed one, and I am a Suldam, a holder of the leash. When Damani and Suldam are joined, whatever hurt the Suldam feels, the Damani feels twice over.
That's what I like about the switch I have is I'm able to play it on my TV.
A Suldam in any way, and you must protect your Suldam even more than yourself. I am Rena. How are you called? I am not what you said, Egwene muttered. She pulled at the collar again. It gave no more than before. She thought of knocking the woman down and trying to pry the bracelet from her wrist, but rejected it. Even if the soldiers did not try to stop her, and so far they seemed to be ignoring her and Rena altogether, she had the sinking feeling.
Well, I got my switch from
touching her left
Aaron's.
eye brought a wince. It did not feel puffy,
So they would do it on monthly
payments
payments.
To match Rena's, but it still hurt.
That's how I'm probably gonna
Her
get the
left
switch
eye
2
and
from
Rena's
too.
left eye. She raised her voice. Leandrin Sedai, why are you letting them do this? Leandrin dusted her hands together, never looking in her direction. The very first thing you must learn, Rena said, is to do exactly as you are told and without delay. Egwene gasped. Suddenly her skin burned and prickled as if she had rolled in stinging nettles from the soles of her
The
feet
good
to
thing
her scalp.
is
She tossed her head as
well,
the burning sensation increased.
yeah, I guess
Many Sultan,
it's a
Rena
plus
went on
for
in an almost friendly tone.
for paying off the
Do
way you
not
do,
believe
because
Damani should be allowed
you
names,
do pay
or at
more,
least only names they are given.
but
I am the one who took you,
if it messes
so
up
I will
during
be in
that
charge of
time
your
that you're
training,
still paying
and
it
I will
off,
allow you to keep your own name.
they'll either
If you do not displease
fix
me,
it or
Sir,
replace it.
I am mildly upset with you now. Do you really wish to keep on
It's
until I am
what happened with
angry?
my
Quivering, Egwene
my
gritted her teeth. Her nails dug into her
PS5 when I
palms
was
with
still
the effort
paying
of
it
not
off.
scratching wildly. Idiot! It's only your name. Egwene!
I had about
to get out.
a month left to pay it off.
Instantly, the burning itch was gone.
Yeah, it does help with
She
your
let
credit.
out a long, unsteady breath.
I had like a month to pay it off, and
Rena said,
my disk drive went out.
That is a good name.
So they actually
And to Egwene's horror,
replaced
Rena
it
patted her on the head as she would a dog.
for me. So
That,
I guess
she
that's a
realized,
plus.
was what she had detected in the woman's voice. A certain goodwill for a dog in training, not quite the friendliness one might have toward another human being. Rena chuckled. Now you are even angrier. If you intend to strike at me again, remember to make it a small blow, for you will feel it twice as hard as I. Do not attempt to channel. That you will never do without my express command. Egwene's eye throbbed. She pushed herself to her feet and tried to ignore Rena as much as it was possible to ignore someone who held a leash fastened to a collar around your neck. Her cheeks burned when the other woman chuckled again. She wanted to go to Min, but the amount of leash Rena had let out would not reach that far. She called softly, Min, are you all right? Sitting slowly back on her heels, Min nodded, then put a hand to her head as if she wished she had not moved it. Jagged lightning crackled across the clear sky, then struck among the trees some distance off. Egwene jumped and suddenly smiled.
And the good thing too about Erin's is
if anyone could free her and Min, Nynaeve could. Her smile faded into a glare for Liandrin. For whatever the reason the Aes Sedai had betrayed them,
you don't have to jump through all them hoops like, say,
the glare did no good.
Rena Center or
not look away from the
anything else like that.
The bare-chested men knelt, lowering the palanquin to the ground, and Suroth stepped down, carefully arranging her robe, then picked her way to Liandrin on soft-slippered feet. The two women were much of a size. Brown eyes stared levelly into black. You were to bring me two, Suroth said. Instead, I have only one, while two run loose, one of them more powerful by far than I had been led to believe. She will attract every patrol of ours within 2 leagues. I brought you 3, Liandrin said calmly. If you cannot manage to hold them, perhaps our master should find another among you to serve him. You take fright at trifles. If patrols come,
pretty much all you have to do pretty much is
again in the near distance, and
have
later,
proof of income, and
thunder not far from
you give your references and whatnot, but that's about it. They don't check your credit or nothing like that.
I could still return to Falmo with 2 new Damani, Suroth said. It grieves me to allow Aes Sedai, she twisted the words like a curse, to walk free. Liandrin's face did not change, but Egwene saw a nimbus abruptly glow around her. Beware, High Lady, Rena called. She stands ready. There was a stir among the soldiers, a reaching for swords and lances, but Suroth only steepled her hands, smiling at Liandrin over her long nails. You will make no move against me, Liandrin. Our master would disapprove, as I am surely needed here more than you, and you fear him more than you fear being made Damani. Liandrin smiled, though white spots marked her cheeks with anger. And you, Suroth, fear him more than you fear me burning into a cinder where you stand. Just so. We both fear him, yet even our master's needs will change with time.
But cooking my errands too, the ones I got right there, actually were
As you say, Suroth, Our masters
replacements for
change.
these
I will
two
remind you of it
because
on the day when you kneel to
I
me.
started
A tall leather leaf, perhaps a mile away, suddenly
getting
became
stick
a roaring
drift
torch.
in this one.
This
I told
grows
them about it,
tiresome,
and
Suroth
they
said.
ended up sending
Elbar.
replacements, and
The
asked them
hook-nosed
if
man produced a
they
horn
wanted
no bigger
these
than
two
his
back,
fist.
and they
It
said
made a
no.
hoarse, piercing cry. You must find the woman Nynaeve, Liandrin said sharply. Elaine is of no importance, but both the woman and this girl here must be taken with you on your ships when you sail. I know very well what has been commanded, Marath Damani, though I would give much to know why. However much you were told, child, Liandrin sneered, that is how much you are allowed to know. Remember that you serve and obey. These two must be removed to the other side of the Arath Ocean and kept there. Suroth sniffed. I will not remain here to find this Nynaeve. My usefulness to our master will be at an end if Turak hands me over to the Seekers for Truth. Liandrin opened her mouth angrily, but Suroth refused to allow
They might. They probably will.
not
Just
remain free for long. Neither of them
you have
will.
to stay on it because
When
they
we
pretty
sail
much
again, we will take
first
with us
come,
every
first
woman
serve
on
on
this
it.
miserable spit of land who can channel even slightly, leashed and collared. If you wish to remain and search for her, do so. The trolls will be here soon, thinking to engage the rabble that still hides in the countryside. Some patrols take Damani with them, and they will not care what master
I just
you
barely
serve. Should you survive the encounter,
this
the
month actually
will teach you a new life. And I do not believe our master
I made my last payment for my Switch and my laptop. That's pretty much what I'm using right now.
If either is allowed to remain here, Liandrin said tightly, our master will trouble himself with you, Suroth. Take them both or pay the price. She strode to the waygate, clutching the reins of her mare. Soon it was closing behind her. The soldiers who had gone after Nynaeve and Elaine came galloping back with the two women linked by leash, collar, and bracelet, the Damani and the Suldam riding side by side. 3 men led horses with bodies across the saddles. Egwene felt a surge of hope when she realized the bodies all wore armor. They had not caught Nynaeve or Elaine, either one.
This is where I got my
my
GoPro from.
To her feet, but the hook-nosed man planted a boot between her shoulder blades and
I'll show that as soon as I'm done rolling this.
Gasping for breath, she twitched there weakly. I beg permission to speak, High Lady, he said.
And what I like about the GoPro is
and he went on. This peasant cut me, High Lady. If the High Lady has no use for her...
Is it, at least the version I got is you could live stream from it.
He reached over his shoulder for the hilt of his sword. No! Egwene shouted. She heard Rena curse softly, and suddenly the burning itch covered her skin again, worse than before, but she did not stop. Please, High Lady, please, she is my friend. Pain, such as she had never known, racked her through the burning. Every muscle knotted and cramped. She pitched on her face in the dirt, mewling, but she could still see Elbar's heavy, curved blade come free of its sheath, see him raise it with both hands. Please! Oh, men! Abruptly the pain was gone as if it had never been. Only the memory remained. Suroth's blue velvet slippers, dirt-stained now, appeared in front of her face, but it was at Elbar that she stared. He stood there with his sword over his head and all his weight on the foot on Min's back, and he did not move. This peasant is your friend, Suroth said. Egwene started to rise, but at a surprised arching of Suroth's eyebrow, she remained lying where she was and only raised her head. She had to save Min, if it means groveling. She parted her lips and hoped her gritted teeth would pass for a smile. Yes, my lady. And if I spare her, if I allow her to visit you occasionally, you will work hard and learn as you are taught. I will, High Lady. She would have promised much more to keep that sword from splitting Min's skull. I'll even keep it, she thought sourly, as long as I have to. Put the girl on her horse, Elbar, Suroth said. Tie her on if she cannot sit her saddle. If this Damani proves a disappointment, perhaps then I will let you have the head of the girl. She was already moving toward her palanquin. Rena pulled Egwene roughly to her feet and pushed her toward Bella, but Egwene had eyes only for Min. Elbar was
Let me
no
check on that
gentler
real
with
quick.
Min than Rena with her, but she thought Min was all right. At least Min shrugged off Elbar's attempt to tie her across her
It's
saddle
the
and climbed onto her gelding.
Hero 9 Black.
The odd party started off westward, with Suroth leading and Elbar slightly to the rear of her palanquin, but close enough to heed any summons immediately. Rena and Egwene rode at the back with Min, and the other Suldam and Damani behind the soldiers.
With me and Most Hated do our smoking lives, we're actually doing it off his GoPro because he has the same brand, should I say.
Covered the rolling land, and the smoke of the burning leather leaf was soon only a smudge in the sky behind them. You were honored, Rena said after a time, having the High Lady speak to you. Another time I would let you wear a ribbon to mark the honor, but since you brought her attention on yourself... Egwene cried out as a switch seemed to lash across her back, then another across her leg, her arm. From every direction they seemed to come. She knew there was nothing to block, but she could not help throwing her arms about as if to stop the blows. She bit her lip to stifle her moans, but tears still rolled down her cheeks. Bella whinnied and danced, but Rena's grip on the silver leash kept her from carrying Egwene away. None of the soldiers even looked back. What are you doing to her? Min shouted. Egwene? Stop it! You live on sufferance. Min, is it? Rena said mildly. Let this be a lesson for you as well. So long as you try to interfere, it will not stop. Min raised a fist, then let it fall. I won't interfere. Only please stop it. Egwene, I'm sorry. The unseen blows went on for a few moments more, as if to show
Then for my Switch, I ended up buying a Colo case for it.
The pain did not go away this time. She pushed back the sleeve of her dress, thinking to see wheels. Her skin was
for
unmarked,
holds
but
games
the feel
too.
of them was still there. She swallowed. It was not your fault, Min. Bella tossed her head, eyes rolling.
Then I also got a rare game. Well, yeah, rare. Because I only put it out for so much.
Rena said.
Let's see.
She sounded so patient, dealing so kindly with someone who was too dense to see the right.
I don't know how it's going to focus.
When a Damani is punished, it is always her
Super
fault,
Mario 3D All-Stars.
She does not know why. A Damani must anticipate what her Suldam wants. But this time you do know why. Damani are like furniture or tools, always there, ready to be used, but never pushing themselves forward for attention, especially not for the attention of one of the blood. Egwene bit her lip until she tasted blood. This is a nightmare. It can't be real. Why did Liandrin do this?
Yeah, that always sucks when your light goes out.
May I ask a question? Of me, you may. Rena smiled. Many Suldam will wear your bracelet over the years. There are always many more Suldam.
And what the trip is, like I'll show you the price for that game.
Took your eyes off the floor or opened your mouth without permission. But I see no reason not to let you speak, so long as you are careful in what you say. One of the other Suldam snorted loudly. She was linked to a pretty dark-haired woman in her middle years who kept her eyes on her hands. Liandrin, Egwene would not give her the honorific.
And this is
And the High Lady spoke of a master they both serve. The thought came into her
for
head
the game like I have it, just
healed
loose.
burns marring his face, and eyes and mouth that sometimes turned to fire. But even if he was only a figure in her dreams, that seemed too horrible to contemplate. Who is he? What does he want with me?
So it's like an $85 game just with the game itself.
To avoid naming
because
she did not think
the reason it's that much is because
just because her name was not mentioned.
when it was first made, it was made for the I think the 30th anniversary, if I remember it right. And then once it was they made it and put it out, they only put it out for a set amount of time.
And I will tell you what I wish you to know. Anything else that you hear or see must be to you as if it never was said, as if it never happened. This way lies safety,
and then
most especially for a Damani.
After it was put out,
too valuable to be killed out of hand, but you might find yourself
they didn't
not
put it
only
out no more
soundly
after that.
punished, but absent a tongue to speak or hands to write. Damani can do what they must without these things.
On mine, I have.
Shivered, though the air was
Let's
not
see.
very cold. Pulling her cloak up onto her shoulders, her hand brushed the leash.
I have Diablo
She jerked at
3,
it
Titan
physically.
Quest,
This is a horrible thing. How can you do this
Assassin's
to anyone?
Creed,
What diseased mind ever thought of
and
it?
that one because there was a cheap one.
Blue-eyed Suldam with the empty leash growled, "This one could do without her tongue already, Rena." Rena only smiled patiently.
But the Titan Quest is a pretty good one too.
Could we allow anyone to run loose who can do what a Damani can?
Nice. Zelda's always good.
Who would be Marach Damani if they were women. It is so here also, I have heard. And they must be killed, of course. But the women do not go mad.
But I'm probably going to post it up and trying to sell that Mario one I have.
A woman who called herself Aes Sedai. Egwene knew incredulity must be painting her face because Rena laughed openly. When Luthair Peandrag Mondwyn, son of the Hawkwing, first faced the armies of the night, he found many among them who called themselves Aes Sedai. They contended for power among themselves and used the one power on the field of battle. One such, a woman named Diane, who thought she could do better serving the Emperor. He was not Emperor then, of course, since he had no
and then I'll still play
armies, came to him with a device she had made.
The Pokemon one just because it's a Nintendo Switch.
Though that
I gotta have that, at least one of them on there.
Required her to serve. Diane made more Idam. The first Suldam were found, and women captured who called themselves Aes Sedai discovered that they were in fact only Marath Damani, those who must be leashed. It is said that when she herself was leashed, Diane's screams shook the towers of midnight. But of course she too was a Marath Damani, and Marath Damani cannot be allowed to run free. Perhaps you will be one of those who has the ability to make Idam. If so, you will be pampered, you may rest assured.
But I got Mortal Kombat for my PS5.
The countryside through which they rode. The land was beginning to rise in low hills, and the thin forest had dwindled to scattered thickets.
I want to get
she was sure she could lose herself.
I don't know, probably
Am I supposed
I don't know what I want to get
to
next for it,
like
for my Switch.
Dog? She said bitterly. A lifetime of being chained to men and women who think I am some kind of animal?
How's it a scam? That's the link that Streamlabs gave me.
All are women. If a man put on this bracelet, most of the time it would be no different than if it were hanging on a peg on the wall.
I know the scam when I put it up.
The blue-eyed Suldam put in harshly. You and he would both die screaming. The woman had sharp features and a tight, thin-lipped mouth, and Egwene realized that anger was apparently her permanent expression. From time to time, the Empress plays with lords by linking them to a Damani. It makes the lords sweat and entertains them.
Oh, is it? I did not know that.
The lord never knows until it is done whether he will live or die, and neither does the Damani. Her laugh was vicious.
Because that's the link they told me to put up. I didn't know it was not a good one.
In such a way,
that's why I'm on the StreamYards.
And I do not mean to train this Damani only to have her thrown away. I have not seen any training at all so far, Rena. Only a great deal of chatter, as if you and this Damani were girlhood friends. Perhaps it is time to see what she can do.
My new pipe I got.
Studying
it's actually a hand forged.
Yet to channel at that distance. She pointed to a tall oak standing alone on a hilltop. Egwene frowned at the tree, perhaps half a mile from the line followed by the soldiers and Suroth's palanquin. She had never tried anything much beyond arm's reach, but she thought it might be possible.
Have to remember not to put that up there anymore.
Try, Rena told her. Feel the tree.
I know that's why I only
Feel the sap in the tree.
I only have the free versions because how much the price went up.
That every drop of sap in every branch flashes to steam in an instant. Do it.
I got it from StreamYards. Cause watch, I'll show you where.
Touched Saidar in 2 days. The desire to fill herself with the one power made her shiver. In half a heartbeat, she discarded will not Wheels that were
Because it
not
says
there
share your
still burned too
referral
sharply
link.
for her to be quite that foolish. Cannot, she finished instead. It is too far, and I haven't done anything like that before. One of the Sul'dam laughed raucously, and Alwyn said, "She never even tried." Rena shook her head almost sadly. "When one has been a Sul'dam long enough," she told Egwene, "one learns to tell many things about Damani even without the
Because
bracelet.
there for a while I
With the
was
bracelet, one can always tell
paying
whether
for it
Damani has tried to
until
cheat.
they jumped up the
You
price
must
like
never
20
lie
bucks
to me
almost.
or to any Sul'dam, not even by
And then when they
anywhere."
did that,
Suddenly the invisible
I just
switches
started,
were back, striking at her everywhere.
excuse me,
Yelling, she tried to hit Rena, but the Sul'dam casually knocked her fist away, and Egwene felt as if Rena had
I
hit
have
her
to
arm
remember
with a
that,
stick. She dug her
D-Man.
heels into Bella's flanks,
Definitely won't be
but the
putting that up there
Sul'dam's
no
grip
more.
on the leash nearly pulled her out of her saddle. Frantically, she reached for saidar, meaning to hurt Rena enough to make her stop, just the kind of hurt she herself had been given. The Sul'dam shook her head wryly. Egwene howled as
I
her
wish I
own
knew
skin
another
was suddenly scalded.
streaming app that
Not until she
I was
fled
able to
from
stream
Saidar
like this
completely
that
did the burn begin to
wasn't
fade,
as
and the unseen
expensive.
blows never ceased or slowed. She tried to shout that
Because
she
I'm
would
getting
try if only Rena would stop, but all
close
she could
to
manage was to scream and writhe.
my monthly limit.
Dimly, she was aware of Min shouting angrily and trying to ride to her side, of Alwyn tearing Min's reins from her hands, of another Sul'dam speaking sharply to her Damani, who looked at Min. And then Min was yelling too, arms flapping as if trying to ward off blows or beat away stinging insects. In her own pain, Min seemed distant. Their cries together were enough to make some of the soldiers twist in their saddles.
Restream?
After one
Definitely
look,
have to look
they
into
laughed
that.
and turned back. How Sul'dam dealt with Damani
Because I'm
was no
using
affair of theirs.
a laptop right
To
now to
Egwene, it
stream.
seemed to go on forever.
It's
But at
either going to be
last
my
it was end.
laptop or
She lay sprawled weakly across the cantle of her saddle, cheeks wet with tears,
whatchamacallit,
sobbing into Bella's
my
mane.
iPad.
The mare whickered uneasily. "It is good that you have spirit," Rena said calmly. "The best Damani are those who have spirit to be shaped and molded." Egwene squeezed her eyes shut. She wished she could close her ears, too, to shut out Rena's voice. "I have to get away. I have to, but how? Nynaeve, help me. Light, somebody help me." "You will be one of the best," Rena said in tones of satisfaction. Her hand stroked Egwene's hair, a mistress soothing her dog. Nynaeve leaned out of her saddle to peer around the screen of prickly-leafed shrubs. Scattered trees met her eyes, some with leaves turning color. The expanses of grass and brush between seemed empty. Nothing moved that she could see except the thinning column of smoke, wavering in a breeze from the leatherleaf. That had been her work, the leatherleaf, and once the lightning called from a clear sky, and a few other things she had not thought to try until those two women tried them on her. She thought they must work together in some way, though she could not understand their relation to each other, apparently leashed as they were. One wore a collar, but the other was chained as surely as she. What Nynaeve was sure of was that one or both were Aes Sedai. She had never had a clear enough sight of them to see the glow of channeling, but it had to be. "I'll certainly take pleasure in telling Shiriam about them," she thought dryly. "Aes Sedai don't use the power as a weapon, do they?" She certainly had. She had at least knocked the two women down with that lightning stroke, and she had seen one of the soldiers, or his body rather, burn from the ball of fire she made and hurled at them. But she had not seen any of the strangers at all in some time now. Sweat beaded on her forehead, and it was not all from exertion. Her contact with saidar was gone, and she could not bring it back. In that first fury of knowing that Liandrin had betrayed them, saidar had been there almost before she knew it, the one power flooding her. It had seemed she could do anything, and as long as they had chased her, rage at being hunted like an animal had fueled her. Now the chase had vanished. The longer she had gone without seeing an enemy at whom she could strike, the more she had begun to worry that they might be sneaking up on her somehow, and the more she had had time to worry about what was happening to Egwene, and Elaine and Min. Now she was forced to admit that what she felt most was fear. Fear for them, fear for herself. It was anger she needed. Something stirred behind a tree. Her breath caught, and she fumbled for Saidar, but all the exercises Shiriam and the others had taught her, all the blossoms unfolding in her mind, all the imagined streams that she held like riverbanks, did no good. She could feel it, sense the source, but she could not touch it. Elaine stepped from behind the tree in a wary crouch, and Nynaeve sagged with relief. The daughter heir's dress was dirty and torn, her golden hair was a tangle of snarls and leaves, and her searching eyes were as wide as those of a frightened fawn, but she held her short-bladed dagger in a steady hand.
Oh,
Nynaeve
Fortnite
picked
is
up
a
her
free
reins
one,
and
huh?
rode into the open. Elaine gave a convulsive jump, then her hand went to her
I've
throat.
never played
She drew a
Fortnite,
deep
though.
breath. Nynaeve responded, and the two women hugged, taking comfort in having fun. Elaine said as they finally stepped away. I thought you were... Do you know where they are? There were two men following me. Another few minutes and they would have caught me, but a horn sounded and they turned their horses and galloped off. They could see me, Nynaeve, and they just left. I went with you, and I haven't seen any of them since. Have you seen Egwene or Min? Elaine shook her head, slumping to sit on the ground. Not since that man hit Min, knocked her down, and one of those women was trying to put something around Egwene's neck. I saw that much before I ran. I don't think they got away, Nynaeve. I should have done something. Min cut the hand that was holding me, and Egwene...
Nice.
I just ran, Nynaeve. I realized I was free.
I'm not very good at shooters.
Mother had better marry Gareth Breen and have another daughter as soon as she can. I'm not fit to take the throne. Don't be a goose, Nynaeve said sharply. Remember, I have a packet of sheep's tongue root among my herbs. Elaine had her head in her hands. The jibe did not even produce a murmur. Listen to me, girl. Did you see me stay to fight 20 or 30 armed men, not to mention the Aes Sedai? If you had waited, the most likely thing by far is that you would be a prisoner too, if they didn't just kill you. They seemed to be interested in Egwene and me for some reason. They might not have cared whether you remained alive or not. Why are they interested in Egwene and me? Why us in particular? Why did Liandrin do this? Why? She had no more answers now than she had had the first time she asked herself these questions.
Yeah, so if I played that, I probably wouldn't do very good at it.
Little good you'd be then to yourself or them. Now get on your feet and brush off your dress. Nynaeve rummaged
My
in her
games have always been
and fix your hair. Elaine got up slowly and
RPGs
took the
or
brush with a
fighters.
small laugh. You sound like Lini, my old nurse. She began to run the brush through her hair, angles pulled. But how are we going to help them, Nynaeve? You may be as strong as a full sister when you are angry, but they have women who can channel too. I cannot think their Aes Sedai, but they might as well be. We do not even know in which direction they took them. West, Nynaeve said. That creature Suroth mentioned Falma, and that's as far west on Tomon Head as you can go. We will go to Falma.
Yeah.
I hope Liandrin is there. I will make her curse the day her mother laid eyes on her father. But first I think we had better find some clothes of the country.
Yeah, definitely have games like that that's gonna definitely raise your blood pressure at times.
Nothing like what we have on. We would stand out in Falma as strangers. I would not mind a Damani dress, though Mother would surely have a fit if she ever found out I'd worn one, and Lini would never let me hear the end of it. But even if we find a village, can we afford new dresses? I have no idea how much money you have, but I have only 10 gold marks and perhaps twice that in silver. That will keep us 2 or 3 weeks, but I don't know what we will do after that. A few months as a novice in Tar Valon, Nynaeve said, laughing, has not stopped you thinking like the heir to a throne. I don't have a tenth what you do, but altogether it will keep us 2 or 3 months in comfort. Longer, if we are careful. I have no intention of buying us dresses, and they won't be new in any case. My gray silk dress will do us some good with all those pearls and that gold thread. If I can't find a woman who will trade us each 2 or 3 sturdy changes for that, I will give you this ring and I will be the novice. She swung up into her saddle and reached a hand down to pull Elaine up behind her. "What are we going to do when we reach Falma?" Elaine asked as she settled into the run. "I won't know that until we are there." Nynaeve paused, letting the horse stand. "Are you sure you want to do this? It will be dangerous." "More dangerous than it is for Egwene and Min? They would come after us if our circumstances were reversed. I know they would. Are we going to stay here all day?" Elaine dug her heels in as the mare started off. Nynaeve turned the horse until the sun, still short of its noonday crest, shone through her eyes. "We are going to have to be cautious. The Aes Sedai we know can recognize a woman who can channel just by being within arm's length of her. These Aes Sedai may be able to pick us up if they are looking for us, and we had better assume they are. They were certainly looking for Elaine and me. But why?" "Yes, cautious. You were right before, too. We will not do them any good letting ourselves be caught as well." Elaine was silent for a moment. "Do you think it was all lies, Nynaeve? What Liandrin told us about Rand being in danger and the others? Aes Sedai do not lie."
That's what I'm doing right now. Is I'm looking through their free games they got.
Telling her of the oaths a woman took on being raised to full sisterhood, oaths spoken inside a ter'angreal that bound her to keep them. To speak no word that is not true. That was one, but everyone knew that the truth an Aes Sedai said might not be the truth you thought you heard. "I expect Rand is warming his feet in front of Lord Agelmar's fire in Fal Dara this minute," she said. "I can't worry about him now. I have to think about Egwene and Min." "I suppose he is," Elaine said with a sigh. She shifted behind the saddle. "If it is very far to Falma, Nynaeve, I expect to ride in the saddle half the time. This is not a very comfortable seat. We will never reach Falma at all if you let this horse set her own pace the whole way." Nynaeve booted the mare to a quick trot, and Elaine yelped and caught at her cloak. Nynaeve told herself that she would take a turn riding behind and not complain if Elaine put the horse to a gallop, but for the most part she ignored the gasps of the woman bouncing behind her. She was too busy hoping that by the time they reached Falma, she could stop being afraid and start being angry. The breeze freshened, cool and brisk, with a hint of cold yet to come.
Chapter 41. Disagreements. Thunder rumbled across the slate-dark afternoon sky. Rand pulled the hood of his cloak further up, hoping to keep at least some of the cold rain off. Red stepped through muddy puddles doggedly. The hood hung sodden around Rand's head, as the rest of the cloak did around his shoulders, and his fine black coat was just as wet and as cold. The temperature would not have far to drop before snow or sleet came down instead of rain. Snow would fall soon, again. The people in the village they had passed through said 2 snows had already come this year. Shivering, Rand almost wished it was snowing. Then at least he would not be soaked to the skin. The column plodded along, keeping a wary eye on the rolling country. Ingtar's gray owl hung heavily even when the wind gusted. Holmes pulled his cowl back to sniff the air. The wind nor cold had any effect on the trail. He looked at the kind of girl he was seeking. The sniffer had found nothing. Behind him, Uno mutter a curse. Boyle kept checking his side flags. He did not seem to mind getting wet himself, but he worried continually. Everyone was happy except for Varen, who appeared too lost in thought to even notice that her hood had slid back, exposing her face to the rain. "Can't you do something about this?" Rand demanded of her. A small voice in the back of his head told him he could do it himself. All he needed to do was be Saidin. So sweet, the call of Saidin. To be filled with the one power, to be one with the storm. Turn the sky to the sun, ride the storm as it moves, whip it to fury and scour Toman head clean from the sea to the plain. Embrace Saidin. He suppressed the longing ruthlessly. The Aes Sedai gave a start. "What? Oh, I suppose. A little. I couldn't stop a storm this big, not by myself. It covers too much area. But I could lessen it some. Where we are, at least. She wiped rain from her face, seemed to realize for the first time that her hood had slipped, and pulled it back up absently. Then why don't you? Matt said. The shivering face peering out from under his hood looked at death's door, but his voice was vigorous. Because if I used that much of the one power, any Aes Sedai closer than 10 miles would know someone had channeled. We don't want to bring these Seanchan down on us with some of their Damani. Her mouth tightened angrily. They had learned a little of the invaders in that village called Atuan's Mill, though most of what they had heard hatched more questions than it answered. The people had babbled one moment and clamped their mouths shut the next, trembling and looking over their shoulders. They all shook with fear that the Seanchan would return with their monsters and their Damani. That women who should have been Aes Sedai were instead leashed like animals frightened the villagers even more than the strange creatures the Seanchan commanded, things the folk of Atuan's Mill could only describe in whispers as coming from nightmares. And worst of all, the examples the Seanchan had made before leaving still chilled the people to their marrow. They had buried their dead, but they feared to clean away the large, charred patch in the village square. None of them would say what had happened there, but Huron had vomited as soon as they entered the village, and he would not go near the blackened ground. Atuan's Mill had been half deserted. Some had fled to Falma, thinking the Seanchan would not be so harsh in a town they held fast. And others had gone east. More had said they were thinking of it. There was fighting on Almouth Plain. Tarabanners battling Damani, it was said, but such houses and barns as were burned there were kindled by torches in the hands of men. Even a war was easier to face than what the Seanchan had done, what they might do. Why did Fane bring the horn here? Perrin muttered. The question had been asked by each of them at one time or another, and no one had an answer. There's war, and these Seanchan and their monsters. Why here? Ingtar turned in his saddle to look back at them. His face appeared almost as haggard as Matt's. There are always men who see chances for their own advantage in the confusion of war. Fane is one like that. No doubt he thinks to steal the horn again, from the Dark One this time, and use it for his own profit. The Father of Lies never lays simple plans, Perrin said. It may be that he wants Fane to bring the horn here for some reason known only in Shale Ghul. Monsters, Matt snorted. His cheeks were sunken now, his eyes hollow. That he sounded healthy only made it worse. They saw some Trollocs are a fate, if you ask me. Well, why not? If the Seanchan have Aes Sedai fighting for them, why not Fades and Trollocs? He caught Perrin staring at him and flinched. Well, they are. Unleashes or not. They can channel, and that makes them Aes Sedai. He glanced at Rand and gave a ragged laugh. That makes you Aes Sedai. The light help us all. Masema came galloping from ahead, through the mud and the steady rain. There's another village ahead, my lord, he said, as he pulled in beside Ingtar. His eyes only swept past Rand, but they tightened, and he did not look at Rand again. It is empty, my lord. No villagers, no Seanchan, nobody at all. The houses all look sound, though, except for 2 or 3 that... Well, they aren't there anymore, my lord. Ingtar raised his hand and signaled for a trot. The village Masema had found covered the slopes of a hill with a paved square at the top around a circle of stone walls. The houses were of stone, all flat-roofed, and few more than a single story. 3 that had been larger, along one side of the square, were only heaps of blackened rubble. Shattered chunks of stone and roof beams lay scattered across the square. A few shutters banged when the wind gusted. Ingtar dismounted in front of the only large building still standing. The creaking sign above its door bore a woman juggling stars, but no name. Rain came off the corners in 2 steady drizzles. Perrin hurried inside while Ingtar spoke. No, search every house. If there is anyone left, perhaps they can tell us what happened here. And maybe a little more about these Seanchan. And if there's any food, bring that too, and blankets. Uno nodded and began telling off men. Ingtar turned to Huron. What do you smell? Did Fane come through here? Huron, rubbing his nose, shook his head. Not him, my lord. And not the Trollocs, neither. Whoever did that left a stench, though. He pointed to the wreckage that had been houses. It was killing, my lord. There were people in there. Seanchan, Ingtar growled. Let's get inside. Ragan, find some sort of stable for the horses. Baron already had fires going in both of the big fireplaces at either end of the common room, and was warming her hands at one, her sodden cloak spread out on one of the tables dotting the tiled floor. She had found a few candles, too, now burning on a table stuck in their own tallow. Emptiness and quiet, except for the occasional grumble of thunder, added to the flickering shadows to give the place a cavernous feel. Rand tossed his equally wet cloak and a coat on a table and joined her. Only Loyal seemed more interested in checking his books than in warming himself. We will never find the Horn of Valdir this way, Ingtar said. 3 days since we arrived here. He shuddered and scrubbed a hand through his hair. Rand wondered what the Shinar had seen in his other lives. Another 2 at least to Falma, and we have not found so much as a hair of Fane or Dark Friends. There are scores of villages along the coast. He could have gone to any of them and taken ship anywhere by now, if he was ever here. He is here, Baron said calmly, and he went to Falma. And he's still here, Rand said, waiting for me. Please, Light, he's still waiting. Huron still hasn't caught a whiff of him, Ingtar said. The sniffer shrugged as if he felt himself at fault for the failure. Why would he choose Falma? If those villagers are to be believed, Falma is held by these Seanchan. I would give my best hound to know who they are and where they came from. Who they are is not important to us. Baron knelt and unfastened her saddlebags, pulling out dry clothes. At least we have rooms in which to change our clothes, though it will do us little good unless the weather changes. Ingtar, it may be well that what the villagers told us is right, that they are the descendants of Arthur Hawkwing's armies come back. What matters is that Padan Fane has gone to Falma. The writings in the dungeon at Faldara never mentioned Fane. Forgive me, Aes Sedai, but that could have been a trick as easily as Dark Prophecy. I can't believe even Trollocs would be stupid enough to tell us everything they were going to do before they did it. She twisted to look up at him. And what do you mean to do if you will not take my advice? I mean to have the Horn of Valdir, Ingtar said firmly. Forgive me, but I have to trust my own senses before some words scrawled by a Trolloc. A Myrddraal, surely, Baron murmured, but he did not even pause. Or a Dark Friend, seeming to betray himself out of his own mouth. I mean to quarter the ground until Huron smells a trail, or we find Fane in the flesh. I must have the horn, Baron, said I must. That isn't the way, Huron said softly. Not must. What happens, happens. No one paid him any mind. We all must, Baron murmured, peering into her saddlebags. Yet some things may be even more important than that. She did not say more, but Rand grimaced. He longed to get away from her and her prods and hints. I am not the Dragon Reborn. But I wish I could just get away from Aes Sedai completely. Ingtar, I think I'm riding on to Falma. Fane is there. I am sure he is. And if I don't come soon, he will do something that hurt Emond's Field. He had not mentioned that part before. They all stared at him, Mat and Karen frowning, worried but considering. Karen as if she had just seen a new piece added to the puzzle. Loyal looked astonished, and Huron seemed confused. Ingtar was openly disbelieving. Why would he do that? The Shinaran said. I don't know, Rand lied. But that was part of the message he left with Barthanes. And did Barthanes say Fane was going to Falma? Ingtar demanded. No. It wouldn't matter if he had. He gave a bitter laugh. Dark Friends lie as naturally as they breathe. Rand, Mat said. If I knew how to stop Fane from hurting Emond's Field, I would. If I was sure he was going to. But I need that dagger, Rand. And Huron has the best chance of finding it.
I will go wherever you go, Rand,
Boyle said. He had finished making sure the books were dry and was taking off his sodden coat.
but I don't see where a few more days will change anything one way or another now. Try being a little less hasty for once.
It doesn't matter to me whether we go to Falman now, later, or never, Aaron said with a shrug. But if Fane really is threatening Emmons Field, well, Matt's right. Huron is the best way to find him. I can't find him, Lord Rand, Huron put in. Let me get one sniff of him, and I'll take you right to him. There's never anything else left a trail like his. You must make your own choice, Rand, Baron said carefully. But remember that Falma is held by invaders, about whom we still know next to nothing. If you go to Falma alone, you may find yourself a prisoner or worse. That will serve nothing. I am sure whatever choice you make will be the right one.
Aviran,
Boyle rumbled. Rand threw up his hands. Uno came in from the square, shaking rain off his cloak. Not a flaming soul to be found, my lord. Looks to me like they ran like striped pigs. Livestock's all gone, and there isn't a bloody cart or wagon left either. Half the houses are stripped to the flaming doors. I'll wager my next month's pay you could follow them by the bloody furniture they tossed on the side of the road when they realized it was only weighing down their flaming wagons. What about clothes? Ingtar asked. Uno blinked his one eye in surprise. Just a few bits and pieces, my lord. Mainly what they didn't think was bloody worth taking with them. They will have to do. Huron, I mean to dress you and a few more as local people. As many as we can manage, so you won't stand out. I want you to swing wide, north and south, until you cross the trail. More soldiers were coming in, and they all gathered around Ingtar and Huron to listen. Rand leaned his hands on the mantel over the fireplace and stared into the flames. They made him think of Baalzaman's eyes. There isn't much time, he said. I feel something pulling me to Falma, and there isn't much time. He saw Baron watching him and added harshly, Not that. It's Fane I have to find. It has nothing to do with that. Baron nodded. The wheel weaves as the wheel wills, and we are all woven into the pattern. Fane has been here weeks before us, perhaps months. A few more days will make little difference in whatever is going to happen. I'm going to get some sleep, he muttered, picking up his saddlebags. We can't have carried up all the beds. Upstairs, he did find beds, but only a few still had mattresses, and those so lumpy he thought it might be more comfortable to sleep on the floor. Finally, he chose a bed where the mattress simply sagged in the middle. There was nothing else in the room except one wooden chair and a table with a rickety leg. He took off his wet things, putting on a dry shirt and breeches before lying down, since there were no sheets or blankets, and propped his sword beside the head of the bed. Wryly, he thought that the only thing dry he had for a coverlet was the dragon's banner. He left it safely buckled inside the saddlebags. Rain drummed on the roof and thunder growled overhead, and now and again a lightning flash lit the windows. Shivering, he rolled this way and that on the mattress, seeking some comfortable way to lie, wondering if the banner would not do for a blanket after all, wondering if he should ride on to Falma. He rolled to his other side, and Baalzaman was standing beside the chair with the pure white length of the dragon's banner in his hands. The room seemed darker there, as if Baalzaman stood on the edge of a cloud of oily black smoke. Nearly healed burns crisscrossed his face, and as Rand looked, his pitch-dark eyes vanished for an instant, replaced by endless caverns of fire. Rand's saddlebags lay by his feet, buckles undone, flap thrown back where the banner had been hidden. The time comes closer, Luzthern. 1,000 threads draw tight, and soon you will be tied and trapped, set to a course you cannot change. Madness, death. Before you die, will you once more kill everything you love? Rand glanced at the door, but he made no move except to sit up on the side of the bed. What good to try running from the Dark One? His throat felt like sand. "I'm not the dragon, Father of Lies," he said hoarsely. The darkness behind Baalzamon roiled, and furnaces roared as Baalzamon laughed. "You honor me, and belittle yourself. I know you too well. I've faced you 1,000 times. 1,000 times 1,000. I know you to your miserable soul, Luther and Kinslayer." He laughed again. Rand put a hand in front of his face against the heat of that fiery mouth. "What do you want? I will not serve you. I will not do anything that you want. I'll die first." "You will die, worm. How many times have you died across the span of the ages, fool? And how much has death availed you? The grave is cold and lonely, save for the worms. The grave is mine. This time there will be no rebirth for you. This time the wheel of time will be broken, and the world remade in the image of the shadow. This time your death will be forever. Which will you choose? Death everlasting, or life eternal? And power." Rand hardly realized that he was on his feet. The void had surrounded him, Saidin was there, and the one power flowed into him. That fact almost cracked the emptiness. Was this real? Was it a dream? Could he channel in a dream? But the torrent rushing into him swept away his doubts. He hurled it at Baalzamon, hurled the pure one power, the force that turned the wheel of time, a force that could make seas burn and eat mountains. Baalzamon took half a step back, holding the banner clutched before him. Flames leaped into his wide eyes and mouth, and the darkness seemed to cloak him in shadow. In the shadow. The power sank into that black mist and vanished, soaked up like water on parched sand. Rand drew on Saidin, pulled for more and still more. His flesh seemed so cold, it must shatter at a touch. It burned as if it must boil away. His bones felt on the point of crisping to cold crystal ash. He did not care. It was like drinking life itself. "Fool!" Baalzamon roared. "You will destroy yourself!" Mad. The thought floated somewhere beyond the consuming flood. The dagger, the horn, Thane, Emond's Field. I can't die yet. He was not sure how he did it, but suddenly the power was gone, and Saidin and the void. Shuddering uncontrollably, he fell to his knees beside the bed, arms wrapped around himself in a vain effort to stop their twitching. "That is better, Luz Theron." Baalzamon tossed the banner to the floor and put his hands on the chair back. Wisps of smoke rose from between his fingers. The shadow no longer encompassed him. "There is your banner, Kinslayer. Much good it will do you. 1,000 strings, laid over 1,000 years, have drawn you here. 10,000 woven throughout the ages, tie you like a sheep for slaughter. The wheel itself holds you prisoner to your fate age after age. But I can set you free. You cowering cur. I alone in the entire world can teach you how to wield the power. I alone can stop it killing you before you have a chance to go mad. I alone can stop the madness. You have served me before. Serve me again, Luz Theron, or be destroyed forever." "My name," Rand forced between chattering teeth, "is Rand al'Thor." The shivering forced him to squeeze his eyes shut, and when he opened them again, he was alone. Baalzamon was gone. The shadow was gone. His saddlebags stood against the chair with the buckles done up, and one side bulging with the bulk of the dragon's banner, just as he had left it. But on the chair back, tendrils of smoke still rose from the charred impressions of fingers.
Chapter 42. Falme. Nynaeve pressed Elaine back into the narrow alleyway between a cloth merchant's shop and a potter's works as the pair of women linked by a silvery leash passed by, heading down the cobblestone street toward Falmouth Harbor. They did not dare allow that pair to come too close. The people in the street made way for those two even more quickly than they did for Shan-Chan soldiers or the occasional noble's palanquin, thickly curtained now that the days were cold. Even the street artists did not offer to draw them in chalks or pencils, although they pestered everyone else. Nynaeve's mouth tightened as her eyes followed the Suldam and the Domani through the crowd. Even after weeks in the town, the sight sickened her. Perhaps it sickened her more now. She could not imagine doing that to any woman, not even Moiraine or Liandrin. Well, maybe Liandrin, she admitted sourly. Sometimes at night, in the small, smelly room the two of them had rented above a fishmonger, she thought of what she would like to do to Liandrin when she got her hands on her. Liandrin even more than Suroth. More than once she had been shocked at her own cruelty, even while she was delighted at her inventiveness. Still trying to keep the pair in sight, her eye fell on a bony man well down the street, before the shifting throng hid him again. She had only a flash of a big nose and a narrow face. He wore a rich bronze velvet robe of Shan-Chan cut over his clothes, but she thought that he was no Shan-Chan, though the servant following him was, and a servant of high degree, with one temple shaved. The local people had not taken to Shan-Chan fashions, particularly that one. That looked like Padan Fain, she thought incredulously. It couldn't be. Not here. Nynaeve, Elaine said softly. Could we move on now? That fellow selling apples is looking at his table as if he's thinking he had more a few moments ago, and I would not want him wondering what I have in my pockets. They both wore long coats made of sheepskin, with the fleece turned in and bright red spirals embroidered across the breast. It was country garb, but it passed well enough in Falmouth, where many people had come in from the farms and villages. Among so many strangers, the two of them had been able to sink in unnoticed. Nynaeve had combed out her braid, and her gold ring, the serpent eating its own tail, now nestled under her dress beside Lan's heavy ring on the leather cord around her neck. The large pockets of Elaine's coat bulged suspiciously. You stole those apples? Nynaeve hissed quietly, pulling Elaine out into the crowded street. Elaine, we don't have to steal. Not yet, anyway. No? How much money do we have left? You have been not hungry very often at mealtimes the last few days. Well, I am not hungry, Nynaeve snapped, trying to ignore the hollow in her middle. Everything cost considerably more than she had expected. She had heard local people complaining about how prices had risen since the Shan-Chen came. Give me one of those. The apple Elaine dug out of her pocket was small and hard, but it crunched with a delicious sweetness when Nynaeve bit into it. She licked the juice from her lips. How did you manage to... She jerked Elaine to a halt and peered into her face. Did you... She could not think of a way to say it with so many streaming by, but Elaine understood. Only a little. I made that stack of old melons with the soft spots fall, and when he started putting them back... She did not even have the grace, as Nynaeve saw it, to blush or look embarrassed. Unconcernedly eating one of the apples, she shrugged. There is no need to frown at me like that. I looked carefully to make sure there was no Domani close. She sniffed. If I were being held prisoner, I would not help my captors find other women to enslave. Although the way these Falmen behave, you would think they were lifelong servants of those who should be their enemies to the death. She looked around, openly contemptuous at the people hurrying by. It was possible to follow the path of any Shan-Chen, even common soldiers, and even at a distance by the ripples of bowing. They should resist. They should fight back. How? Against that? They had to step to the side of the street along with everyone else as a Shan-Chen patrol neared, climbing from the direction of the harbor. Nynaeve managed the bow, hands on knees, with face schooled to a perfect smoothness. Elaine was slower and made her bow with a distasteful twist of her mouth.
Give me 1 second, everyone. I'll be
There
right
were
back.
20 armored men and women in the patrol riding horses, for which Nynaeve was grateful. She could not become used to seeing people riding things that looked like bronze-scaled, tailless cats, and a rider on one of the flying beasts was always enough to make her feel dizzy. She was glad there were so few of them. Still, two leashed creatures trotted along with the patrol, like wingless birds with coarse leather skin and sharp beaks, higher above the cobblestones than the helmeted heads of the soldier. Their long, sinewy legs looked as if they could run faster than any horse. She straightened slowly after the Shan-Chan were gone. Some of those who had bowed for the patrol came close to running. No one was comfortable at the sight of the Shan-Chan's beasts except the Shan-Chan themselves. "Elaine," she said softly as they resumed their climb, "if we are caught, I swear that before they kill us or do whatever they do, I will beg them on bended knees to let me stripe you from top to bottom with the stoutest switch I can find. If you still can't learn to be careful, maybe it's time to think about sending you back to Tar Valon, or home to Caemlyn, or anywhere but here." "I am careful. At least I looked to be sure there was no Damani close by. What about you? I've seen you channel with one in plain sight." "I made sure they weren't looking at me," Nynaeve muttered. She had had to ball up all her anger at women being chained like animals to manage it. "And I only did it once. And it was only a trickle." "A trickle? We had to spend 3 days hiding in our room breathing fish while they searched the town for whoever had done it. Do you call that being careful?"
Yes.
"I had to know if there was a way to unfasten those collars." She thought there was. She would have to test one more collar at least before she was certain, and she was not looking forward to it. She had thought, like Elaine, that the Domani must all be prisoners eager to escape, but it had been the woman in the collar who raised the cry. A man pushing a barrow that bumped over the cobblestones passed by, crying his services to sharpen scissors and knives. "He should resist anyhow," Elaine growled. "They act as if they do not see anything that happens around them, if there's a Shan-Chan in it." Nynaeve only sighed. It did not help that she thought Elaine was at least partly right. At first she had thought some of the Falman's submission at least must be a pose, but she had found no evidence of any resistance at all. She had looked at first, hoping to find help in freeing Egwene and Min, but everyone took fright at the merest hint that they might oppose the Shan-Chan, and she stopped asking before she drew the wrong sort of attention. In truth, she could not imagine how the people could fight. Monsters and Aes Sedai. How can you fight monsters and Aes Sedai? Ahead stood 5 tall stone houses, among the largest in the town, all together making up a block. One street short of them, Nynaeve found an alleyway beside a tailor's shop, where they could keep an eye on some of the tall houses' entrances, at least. It was not possible to see every door at once. She did not want to risk letting Elaine go off on her own to watch more, but it was not wise to go any closer. Above the rooftops on the next street, the Golden Hawk banner of the High Lord Turak flapped in the wind. Only women went in or out of those houses, and most of those were Suldam, alone or with Damani in tow. The buildings had been taken over by the Shan-Chan to house the Damani. Egwene had to be in there, and likely Min. They'd found no sign of Min so far, though it was possible she was as hidden by the crowds as they. Nynaeve had heard many tales of women and girls being seized on the streets or brought in from the villages. They all went into those houses, and if they were seen again, they wore a collar. Settling herself on a crate beside Elaine, she dug into the other woman's coat for a handful of the small apples. There were fewer local folk in the streets here. Everyone knew what the houses were, and everyone avoided them, just as they avoided the stables where the Shan-Chan kept their beasts. It was not difficult to keep an eye on the doors through spaces between the passers-by. Just 2 women stopping for a bite. Just 2 more people who could not afford to eat at an inn. Nothing to attract more than a passing glance. Eating mechanically, Nynaeve tried once more to plan. Being able to open the collar, if she really could, did no good at all unless she could reach Egwene. The apples did not taste so sweet anymore. From the narrow window of her tiny room under the eaves, one of a number roughly walled together from whatever had been there before, Egwene could see the garden where Damani were being walked by their Suldam. It had been several gardens before the Shan-Chen knocked down the walls that separated them and took the big houses to keep their damani. The trees were all but leafless, but the damani were still taken out for air, whether they wanted it or not. Egwene watched the garden because Renna was down there talking with another Suldam, and as long as she could see Renna, then Renna was not going to enter and surprise her. Some other Suldam might come. There were many more Suldam than damani, and every Suldam wanted her turn wearing a bracelet. They called it being complete. But Renna still had charge of her training, and it was Renna who wore her bracelet 4 times out of 5. If anyone came, they would find no impediment to entering. There were no locks on the doors of damani's rooms. Egwene's room held only a hard, narrow bed, a washstand with a chipped pitcher and bowl, 1 chair and a small table, but it had no room for more. Damani had no need of comfort or privacy or possessions. Damani were possessions. Min had a room just like this in another house, but Min could come and go as she would, or almost as she would. Shan-Chen were great ones for rules. They had more for everyone than the White Tower did for novices. Egwene stood far back from the window. She did not want any of the women below to look up and see the glow that she knew surrounded her as she channeled the one power, probing delicately at the collar around her neck, searching futilely. She could not even tell whether the band was woven or made of links. Sometimes it seemed one, sometimes the other, but it seemed all of a piece all the time. It was only a tiny trickle of the power, the merest drip that she could imagine, but it still beaded sweat on her face and made her stomach clench. That was one of the properties of the Idam. If a damani tried to channel without a Suldam wearing her bracelet, she felt sick, and the more of the power she channeled, the sicker she became. Lighting a candle beyond the reach of her arm would have made Egwene vomit. Once Renna had ordered her to juggle her tiny balls of light with the bracelet lying on the table. Remembering still made her shudder. Now the silver leash snaked across the bare floor and up the unpainted wooden wall to where the bracelet hung on a peg. The sight of it hanging there made her jaws clench with fury. A dog leashed so carelessly could have run away. If a damani moved her bracelet as much as a foot from where it had last been touched by a Suldam, Renna had made her do that too, had made her carry her own bracelet across the room, or try to. She was sure it had only been minutes before the Suldam snapped the bracelet firmly on her own wrist, but to Egwene the screaming and the cramps that had had her writhing on the floor had seemed to go on for hours. Someone tapped at the door, and Egwene jumped before she realized it could not be a Suldam. None of them would knock first. She let Saidar go anyway. She was beginning to feel decidedly ill. "Min?" "Here I am for my weekly visit," Min announced as she slipped inside and shut the door. Her cheeriness sounded a little forced, but she always did what she could to keep Egwene's spirits up. "How do you like it?" She spun in a little circle, showing off her dark green wool dress of Shan-Chen cut. A heavy matching cloak hung over her arm. There was even a green ribbon catching up her dark hair, though her hair was hardly long enough for it. Her knife was still in its sheath at her waist, though. Egwene had been surprised when Min first showed up wearing it, but it seemed the Shan-Chen trusted everyone, until they broke a rule. "It's pretty," Egwene said cautiously. "But why?" "I haven't gone over to the enemy, if that is what you were thinking. It was this, or else find some place to stay out in the town, and maybe not be able to visit you again." She started to straddle the chair as she would have in breeches, gave a wry shake of her head, and turned it around to sit. "Everyone has a place in the pattern," she mimicked, "and the place of everyone must be readily apparent. That old hag Mulan apparently got tired of not knowing what my place was on site, and decided I ranked with the serving girls. She gave me the choice. You should see some of the things Shan-Chen serving girls wear, the ones who serve the lords. It might be fun, but not unless I was betrothed, or better yet, married. Well, there's no going back. Not yet, anyway. Mulan burned my coat and breeches." Grimacing to show what she thought of that, she picked up a rock from a small pile on the table and bounced it from hand to hand. "It isn't so bad," she said with a laugh, "except that it has been so long since I wore skirts that I keep tripping over them." Egwene had had to watch her clothes being burned too, including that lovely green silk. It had made her glad she had not brought more of the clothes the Lady Amalisa had given her, though she might never see any of them or the White Tower again. What she had on now was the same dark gray all Damani wore. Damani have no possessions, it had been explained to her. The dress a Damani wears, the food she eats, the bed she sleeps in, are all gifts from her Sul'dam. If a Sul'dam chooses that a Damani sleep on the floor instead of in a bed or in a stall in a stable, it is purely the choice of the Sul'dam. Mullain, who had charge of the Damani quarters, had a droning nasal voice, but she was sharp with any Damani who did not remember every word of her boring lectures. I don't think there will be any going back for me ever, Egwene said, sighing, sinking down on her bed. She gestured to the rocks on the table. Rena gave me a test yesterday. I picked out the piece of iron ore and the copper ore blindfolded every time she mixed them up. She left them all here to remind me of my success. She seems to think it was some kind of reward to be reminded. It doesn't seem any worse than the rest, not nearly as bad as making things explode like fireworks. But couldn't you have lied? Told her you didn't know which was which? You still do not know what this is like. Egwene tugged at the collar. Pulling did no more good than channeling had. When Rena is wearing that bracelet, she knows what I am doing with the power and what I am not. Sometimes she even seems to know when she isn't wearing it. She says Sul'dam develop an affinity, she calls it, after a while. She sighed. No one even thought to test me on this earlier. Earth is one of the 5 powers that was strongest in men. When I picked out those rocks, she took me outside the town and I was able to point right to an abandoned iron mine. It was all overgrown and there wasn't any opening to be seen at all, but once I knew how, I could feel the iron ore still in the ground. There hasn't been enough to make it worth working in 100 years, but I knew it was there. I couldn't lie to her, Min. She knew I had sensed the mine as soon as I did. She was so excited she promised me a pudding with my supper. She felt her cheeks growing hot in anger and embarrassment. Apparently, she said bitterly, I am now too valuable to be wasted making things explode. Any Damani can do that. Only a handful can find ores in the ground. Light, I hate making things explode, but I wish that was all I could do. The color in her cheeks deepened. She did hate it, making trees tear themselves to splinters and the earth erupt. That was meant for battle, for killing, and she wanted no part of it. Yet anything the Shan-Chan let her do was another chance to touch saidar, to feel the power flowing through her. She hated the things Rena and the other Sul'dam made her do, but she was sure that she could handle much more of the power now than she could before leaving Tar Valon. She certainly knew she could do things with it that no sister in the tower had ever thought of doing. They never thought of tearing the earth apart to kill men. Perhaps you won't have to worry about any of it much longer, Min said, grinning. I've found us a ship, Egwene. The captain has been hailed here by the Shan-Chan, and he is about ready to sail with or without permission. If he will take you, Min, go with him, Egwene said wearily. I told you I'm valuable now. Rena says in a few days they're sending a ship back to Shan-Chan, just to take me. Min's grin
1 second, I'll be
vanished
right
and
back.
they stared at each other. Suddenly, Min hurled her rock at the pile on the table, scattering them. There has to be a way out of here. There has to be a way to take that bloody thing off your neck. Egwene leaned her head back against the wall. You know the Shan-Chan have collected every woman they've been able to find who can channel even a speck. They come from all over, not just from here in Falma, but from the fishing villages and from farming towns inland. Tarabona and Damani women, passengers off ships they've stopped. There are 2 Aes Sedai among them. Aes Sedai? Min exclaimed. By habit, she looked around to make sure no Shan-Chan had overheard her saying that name. Egwene, if there are Aes Sedai here, they can help us. Let me talk to them, and they can't even help themselves, Min. I only talked to one. Her name is Rima. The Sul'dam don't call her that, but that's her name. She wanted to make sure I knew it, and she told me there is another. She told me in between bouts of tears. She's Aes Sedai, and she was crying, Min. She has a collar on her neck. They make her answer to Pura, and she can't do anything more about it than I can. They captured her when Falma fell. She was crying because she's beginning to stop fighting against it, because she cannot take being punished anymore. She was crying because she wants to take her own life, and she cannot even do that without permission. Light, I know how she feels. Min shifted uneasily, smoothing her dress with suddenly nervous hands. Egwene, you don't want to... Egwene, you must not think of harming yourself. I will get you out somehow. I will. I'm not going to kill myself, Egwene said dryly. Even if I could. Let me have your knife. Come on, I won't hurt myself. Just hand it to me. Min hesitated before slowly taking her knife from its sheath at her waist. She held it out warily, obviously ready to leap if Egwene tried anything. Egwene took a deep breath and reached for the hilt. A soft quiver ran through the muscles of her arm. As her hand came within a foot of the knife, a cramp suddenly contorted her fingers. Eyes fixed, she tried to force her hand closer. The cramp seized her whole arm, knotting muscles to her shoulder. With a groan, she sank back, rubbing her arm and concentrating her thoughts on not touching the knife. Slowly the pain began to lessen. Min stared at her incredulously. What? I don't understand. Damani are not allowed to touch a weapon of any kind. She worked her arm, feeling the tightness go. Even our meat is cut for us. I don't want to hurt myself, but I could not if I did want to. No Damani is ever left alone where she might jump from a height. That window is nailed shut. Or throw herself in a river. Well, that's a good thing. I mean, I don't know what I mean. If you could jump in a river, you might escape. Egwene went on dully, as if the other woman had not spoken. They are training me, Min. The Sul'dam and the Idam are training me. I cannot touch anything I even think of as a weapon. A few weeks ago I considered hitting Rena over the head with that pitcher, and I could not pour wash water for 3 days. Once I'd thought of it that way, I not only had to stop thinking about hitting her with it, I had to convince myself I would never, under any circumstances, hit her with it before I could touch it again. She knew what had happened, told me what I had to do, and would not let me wash anywhere except with that pitcher and bowl. You are lucky it happened between your visiting days. Rena made sure I spent those days sweating from the time I woke to the time I fell asleep exhausted. I am trying to fight them, but they are training me as surely as they're training Pura. She clapped a hand to her mouth, moaning through her teeth. Her name is Rima. I have to remember her name, not the name they've put on her. She is Rima, and she's Yellow Ajah, and she has fought them as long and as hard as she could. It is no fault of hers that she hasn't the strength left to fight any longer. I wish I knew who the other sister is that Rima mentioned. I wish I knew her name. Remember both of us, Min. Rima of the Yellow Ajah, and Egwene al'Vere. Not Egwene the Damani. Egwene al'Vere of Emond's Field. Will you do that? Stop it, Min snapped. You stop it right this instant. If you get shipped off to Seanchan, I'll be right there with you. But I don't think you will. You know I've read you, Egwene. I don't understand most of it. I almost never do. But I see things I am sure link you to Rand and Perrin and Mat and, yes, even Galad. The light help you for a fool. How can any of that happen if the Seanchan take you off across the ocean? Maybe they're going to conquer the whole world, Min. If they conquer the world, there's no reason Rand and Galad and the rest could not end up in Seanchan. You ninny-headed goose. I am being practical, Egwene said sharply. I don't intend to stop fighting, not as long as I can breathe, but I don't see any hope that I'll ever have the Idam off me either. Just as I don't see any hope that anyone is going to stop the Seanchan. Min, if this ship captain will take you, go with him. At least then one of us will be free. The door swung open and Rena stepped in. Egwene jumped to her feet and bowed sharply, as did Min. The tiny room was crowded for bowing, but Seanchan insisted on protocol before comfort. Your visiting day, is it? Rena said. I had forgotten. Well, there is training to be done even on visiting days. Egwene watched sharply as the Sul'dam took down the bracelet, opened it, and fastened it again around her wrist. She could not see how it was done. If she could have probed with the one power, she would have, but Rena would have known that immediately. As the bracelet closed around Rena's wrist, a look came onto the Suldam's face that made Egwene's heart sink. "You have been channeling." Rena's voice was deceptively mild. There was a spark of anger in her eyes. "You know that is forbidden except when we are complete." Egwene wet her lips. "Perhaps I have been too lenient with you. Perhaps you believe that because you are valuable now, you will be allowed license. I think I made a mistake letting you keep your old name. I had a kitten called Tuli when I was a child. From now on, your name is Tuli. You will go now, Min. Your visiting day with Tuli is ended." Min hesitated only long enough for one anguished look at Egwene before leaving. Nothing Min could say or do would do anything except make matters worse, but Egwene could not help looking longingly at the door as it closed behind her friend. Rena took the chair, frowning at Egwene. "I must punish you severely for this. We will both be called to the Court of the Nine Moons. You for what you can do, I as your Suldam and trainer, and I will not allow you to disgrace me in the eyes of the Empress. I will stop when you tell me how much you love being Damani, and how obedient you will be after this. And Tuli, make me believe every word." Chapter 43. Plan. Outside in the low-ceilinged hallway, Min dug her nails into her palms at the first piercing cry from the room. She took a step toward the door before she could stop herself, and when she did stop, tears sprang up in her eyes. "Light, help me. All I can do is make it worse. Egwene, I'm sorry. I'm sorry." Feeling worse than useless, she picked up her skirts and ran, and Egwene's screams pursued her. She could not make herself stay, and leaving made her feel a coward. Half blind with weeping, she found herself in the street before she knew it. She had intended to go back to her room, but now she could not do it. She could not stand the thought that Egwene was being hurt, while she sat warm and safe under the next roof. Scrubbing the tears from her eyes, she swept her cloak around her shoulders and started down the street. Every time she cleared her eyes, new tears began trickling along her cheeks. She was not accustomed to weeping openly, but then she was not accustomed to feeling so helpless, so useless. She did not know where she was going, only that it had to be as far as she could reach from Egwene's cries. "Min!" The low-pitched shout brought her up short. At first she could not make out who had called. Relatively few people walked the street this close to where the Damani were housed. Aside from a lone man trying to interest two Shanshan soldiers into buying the picture he would draw of them with his colored chalks, everyone local tried to step along quickly without actually appearing to run. A pair of Suldams strolled by, Damani trailing behind with eyes down. The Shanshan women were talking about how many more Maraf Damani they expected to find before they sailed. Min's eyes passed right over the two women in long fleece coats, then swung back in wonder as they came toward her. "Nynaeve? Elaine?" "None other." Nynaeve's smile was strained. Both women had tight eyes, as if they fought worried frowns. Min thought she had never seen anything as wonderful as the sight of them. "That color becomes you," Nynaeve continued. "You should have taken up dresses long since, though I've thought of breeches myself since I saw them on you." Her voice sharpened as she drew close enough to see Min's face. "What is the matter?" "You've been crying," Elaine said. "Has something happened to Egwene?" Min gave a start and looked back over her shoulder. A Suldam and Damani came down the steps she had used and turned the other way, toward the stables and horse yards. Another woman with the lightning panels on her dress stood at the top of the stairs talking with someone still inside. Min grabbed her friends by the arms and hurried them down the street toward the harbor. "It's dangerous for you two here. Light, it's dangerous for you to be in Falme. There are Damani everywhere, and if they find you, you do know what Damani are? Oh, you don't know how good it is to see you both." "I imagine about half as good as it is to see you," Nynaeve said. "Do you know where Egwene is? Is she in one of those buildings? Is she all right?" Min hesitated a fraction before saying, "She's as well as can be expected." Men could see it all too well if she told them what was happening to Egwene right that moment. Nynaeve was as likely as not to go storming back in an attempt to stop it. "Light, Let it be over by now. Might make her bend her stubborn neck just once before they almost break it first. I don't know how to get her out, though. I found a ship captain who I think will take us if we can reach his ship with her. He won't help unless we make it that far, and I cannot say I blame him, but I have no idea how to do even that much. A ship, Nynaeve said thoughtfully. I had meant to simply ride east, but I must say I've worried about it. As nearly as I can make out, we would have to be almost off Tomon Head before we were clear of Shan-Chan patrols completely, and then there's supposed to be fighting of some sort on Almuth Plain. I never thought of a ship. We have horses, and we do not have money for passage. How much does this man want? Min shrugged. I never got that far. We don't have any money either. I thought I could put off paying until after we sail. Afterwards, well, I don't think he'll put into any port where there are Shan-Chan. Wherever he threw us off, it would have to be better than here. Problem is convincing him to sail at all. He wants to, but they patrol off the harbor too, and there is no way of telling if there's a Damani on one of their ships until it's too late. Give me a Damani of my own on my deck, he says, and I will sail this instant. Then he starts talking about drafts and shoals and lee shores. I don't understand any of that, but as long as I smile and nod every now and then, he keeps talking, and I think if I can keep him talking long enough, he'll talk himself into sailing. She drew a shuddering breath. Her eyes started stinging again. Only I don't think there's time to let him talk himself into it anymore. Nynaeve, they're going to send Egwene back to Shan-Chan, and soon. Elaine gasped. But why? She is able to find ore, Min said miserably. A few days, she says, and I don't know if a few days is enough for this man to convince himself to sail. Even if it is, how do we take that shadow-spawned collar off her? How do we get her out of the house? I wish Rand were here, Elaine sighed, and when they both looked at her, she blushed and quickly added, Well, he does have a sword. I wish we had somebody with a sword. 10 of them. 100. It isn't swords or brawn we need now, Nynaeve said, but brains. Men usually think with the hair on their chests. She touched her chest absently, as if feeling something through her coat. Most of them do. We would need an army, Min said. A large army. The Shan-Chan were outnumbered when they faced the Taraboners and the Damani, and they won every battle easily, from what I hear. She hurriedly pulled Nynaeve and Elaine to the opposite side of the street, as the Damani and Suldam climbed past them on the other side. She was relieved there was no need for urging. The other two watched the linked women go as warily as she. Since we don't have an army, the 3 of us will have to do it. I hope one of you can think of something I haven't. I've racked my brains, and I always stumble when it comes to the Idam, the leash and collar. Suldam don't like anyone watching too closely when they open them. I think I can get you inside if that will help. One of you, anyway. They think of me as a servant, but servants may have visitors as long as they keep to the servants' quarters. Nynaeve wore a thoughtful frown, but her face cleared almost immediately, taking on a purposeful look. Don't you worry, Min. I have a few ideas. I've not spent my time here idly. You take me to this man. If he is any harder to handle than the village council with their backs up, I will eat this coat. Elaine nodded, grinning, and Min felt the first real hope she had had since arriving in Falma. For an instant, Min found herself reading the auras of the other 2 women. There was danger, but that was to be expected. And new things, too, among the images she had seen before. It was like that sometimes. A man's ring of heavy gold floated above Nynaeve's head, and above Elaine's, a red-hot iron and an axe. They meant trouble, she was sure, but it seemed distant, somewhere in the future. Only for a moment did the reading last, then all she saw was Elaine and Nynaeve, watching her expectantly. It's down near the harbor, she said. The sloping street became more crowded the further down they went. Street peddlers rubbed elbows with merchants who had brought wagons in from the inland villages and would not go out again until winter had come and gone. Hawkers with their trays called to the passers-by. Bowmen in embroidered cloaks brushed past farm families in heavy fleece coats. Many people had fled here from villages further from the coast. Min saw no point to it. They had leaped from the possibility of a visit from the Shan-Chan to the certainty of Shan-Chan all around them. But she had heard what the Shan-Chan did when they first came to a village, and she could not blame the villagers too much for fearing another appearance. Everyone bowed when Shan-Chan walked past or a curtained palanquin was carried by up the steep street. Min was glad to see Nynaeve and Elaine knew about the bowing. Bare-chested bearers paid no more mind to the people who bent themselves than did arrogant armored soldiers, but failure to bow would surely catch their eyes. They talked a little as they moved down the street, and she was surprised at first to learn they had been in the town only a few days less than Egwene and herself. After a moment, though, she decided it was no wonder they had not met earlier, not with the crowds in the streets. She had been reluctant to spend time further from Egwene than was necessary. There was always the fear that she would go for her allowed visit and find Egwene gone. And now she will be, unless Nynaeve can think of something. The smell of salt and pitch grew heavy in the air, and gulls cried, wheeling overhead. Sailors appeared in the throng, many still barefoot despite the cold. The inn had been hastily renamed the Three Plum Blossoms, but part of the word Watcher still showed through the slapdash paintwork on the sign. Despite the crowds outside, the common room was little more than half full. Prices were too high for many people to afford time sitting over ale. Roaring fires on hearths at either end of the room warmed it, and the fat innkeeper was in his shirt sleeves. He eyed the three women, frowning, and Min thought it was her Shan-Chan dress that stopped him from telling them to leave. Nynaeve and Elaine, in their farm women's coats, certainly did not look as if they had money to spend. The man she was looking for was alone at a table in a corner, in his accustomed place, muttering into his wine. "You have time to talk, Captain Domon?" she said. He looked up, brushing a hand across his beard when he saw she was not alone. She still thought his bare upper lip looked odd with the beard. "Oh, you do bring friends to drink up my coin, do you? Well, that Shan-Chan lord bought my cargo, so coin I have. Sit!" Elaine jumped as he suddenly bellowed, "Innkeeper! Mulled wine here!" "It's all right," Min told her, taking a place on the end of one of the benches at the table. "He only looks and sounds like a bear." Elaine sat down on the other end, looking doubtful. "A bear do I be?" Domon laughed. "Maybe I do. But what of you, girl? Have you given over thought of leaving? That dress do look Shan-Chan to me." "Never," Min said fiercely, but the appearance of a serving girl with the steaming spiced wine made her fall silent. Domon was just as wary. He waited until the girl had gone with his coins before saying, "Fortune prick me, girl, I mean no offense. Most people only want to go on with their lives, whether their lords be Shan-Chan or any other." Nynaeve leaned her forearms on the table. "We also want to go on with our lives, Captain, but without any Shan-Chan. I understand you intend to sail soon." "I would sail today if I could," Domon said glumly. "Every 2 or 3 days that Turak do send for me to tell him tales of the old things I have seen. Do I look a glee man to you? I did think I could spin a tale or two and be on my way, but now I think when I no entertain him any longer, it'd be an even wager whether he do let me go or have my head cut off. Man do look soft, but he be as hard as iron and as cold-hearted." "Can your ship avoid the Shan-Chan?" Nynaeve asked. "Fortune prick me. Could I make it out of the harbor without a Damani rip spray to splinters? I can. If I do know let a Shan-Chan ship with a Damani come too close once I do make the sea. There be shoal waters all along this coast, and spray do have a shallow draft. I can take her into waters those lumbering Shan-Chan hulks can no risk. They must be wary of the winds close inshore this time of year, and once I do have spray—" Nynaeve cut him off. "Then we will take passage with you, Captain. There will be 4 of us, and I will expect you to be ready to sail as soon as we are aboard." Domon scrubbed a finger across his upper lip and peered into his wine. "Well, as to that, there still do be the matter of getting out of the harbor, you see. These Damani—" "What if I tell you you will sail with something better than Damani?" Nynaeve said softly. Min's eyes widened as she realized what Nynaeve intended. Almost under her breath, Elaine murmured, "And you tell me to be careful?" Domon had eyes only for Nynaeve, and they were wary eyes. "What do you mean?" he whispered. Nynaeve opened her coat to fumble at the back of her neck, finally pulling out a leather cord that had been tucked inside her dress. 2 gold rings hung on the cord. Min gasped when she saw one. It was the heavy man's ring she had seen when she read Nynaeve in the street. But she knew it was the other, slighter and made for a woman's slender finger that made Domon's eyes bulge. A serpent biting its own tail. "You know what this means," Nynaeve said, starting to slip the serpent ring from the cord, but Domon closed his hand over it. "Put it away." His eyes darted uneasily. No one was looking at them that Min could see, but he looked as if he thought everyone was staring. "That ring do be dangerous, if it be seen." "As long as you know what it means," Nynaeve said with a calm that made Min envious. She pulled the cord from Domon's hand and retied it around her neck. "I know," he said hoarsely. "I do know what it means. Maybe there do be a chance if you... 4, you say? This girl who do like to listen to my tongue wag, she do be one of the 4, I take it. And you? And..." He frowned at Elaine. "Surely this child is no one like you." Elaine straightened angrily, but Nynaeve put a hand on her arm and smiled soothingly at Domon. "She travels with me, Captain. You might be surprised by what we can do even before we earn the right to a ring. When we sail, you will have 3 on your ship who can fight Damani if need be." 3, he breathed. "There do be a chance. Maybe..." His face brightened for a moment, but as he looked at them, it grew serious again. "I should take you to Spray right now and cast off, but fortune prick me if I can no tell you what you face here if you stay, and maybe even if you go with me. Listen to me and mark what I do say." He took another cautious look around, and still lowered his voice and chose his words carefully. "I did see a woman who wore a ring like that, taken by the Shan-Chen. A pretty slender little woman she was, with a big man with her, who did look as if he did know how to use his sword. One of them must have been careless, for the Shan-Chen did have an ambush laid for them. The big man put 6, 7 soldiers on the ground before he did die himself. The woman... 6 Damani they did put around her, stepping out of the alleys of a sudden. I did think she would do something. You know what I mean? But I know nothing of these things. One moment she did look as if she would destroy them all, then a look of horror did come on her face and she did scream." "They cut her off from the true source." Elaine's face was white. "No matter," Nynaeve said calmly. "We will not allow the same to be done to us. Aye, mayhap it will be as you say, but I will remember it until I die. Rima, help me." That is what she did scream. And one of the Damani did fall down crying, and they did put one of those collars on the neck of the woman, and I did run." He shrugged and rubbed his nose and peered into his wine. "I have seen 3 women taken, and I have no stomach for it. I would leave my aged grandmother standing on the dock to sail from here, but I did have to tell you." "Egwene said they have 2 prisoners," Min said slowly. "Rima, a yellow, and she didn't know who the other is." Nynaeve gave her a sharp look, and she fell silent, blushing. From the look on Domon's face, it had not furthered their cause any to tell him the Shan-Chen held 2 Aes Sedai, not just 1. Yet abruptly he stared at Nynaeve and took a long gulp of wine. "Do that be why you are here? To free those 2? You did say there would be 3 of you." "You know what you need to know," Nynaeve told him briskly. "You must be ready to sail on the instant, any time in the next 2 or 3 days. Will you do it, or will you remain here to see if they will cut off your head after all? There are other ships, Captain, and I mean to have passage assured on one of them today." Min held her breath. Under the table her fingers were knotted. Finally Domon nodded. "I will be ready." When they returned to the street, Min was surprised to see Nynaeve sag against the front of the inn as soon as the door closed. "Are you ill, Nynaeve?" she asked anxiously. Nynaeve drew a long breath and stood up straight, tugging at her coat. "With some people," she said, "you have to be certain. If you show them one glimmer of doubt, they'll sweep you off in some direction you don't want to go." Light, but I was afraid he was going to say no. We have plans yet to make. There are still 1 or 2 small problems to work out." "I hope you don't mind fish, Min," Elaine said. 1 or 2 small problems? Min thought as she followed them. She hoped very much that Nynaeve was not just being certain again.
Chapter 44. 5 will ride forth. Perrin eyed the villagers warily, self-consciously hitching at the too short cloak, embroidered on the chest, and with some holes in it not even patched. But none of them gave him a second glance, despite his strange mix of clothes, and the axe on his hip. Huron had a coat with blue spirals across the chest under his cloak, and Matt wore a pair of baggy trousers that made bunches where they were stuffed into his boots. That had been all they had been able to find that would fit back in the abandoned village. Perrin wondered if this one would be abandoned soon. Half the stone houses were empty, and in front of the inn, up the dirt street from them, 3 ox carts, loaded too heavily, in great mounds, and everything covered with roped canvas, stood with families gathered around them. As he watched them, huddling together and saying their goodbyes to those who were staying, at least for the time being, Perrin decided it was not lack of interest in strangers on the villagers' part. They were carefully avoiding looking at him and the others. These people had learned not to show curiosity about strangers, even strangers who were obviously not Seanchan. Strangers might be dangerous these days on Tomonhead. They had encountered the same studious indifference in other villages. There were more towns here within a few leagues of the coast, everyone holding itself independent. At any rate, they had until the Seanchan came. "I say it's time to get the horses," Matt said, "before they decide to start asking questions. There has to be a first time for it." Huron was staring at a big blackened circle on ground that marred the brown grass of the village green. It had a weathered look, but no one had done anything to erase it. "Maybe 6 or 8 months ago," he muttered, "and it still stinks. The whole village council and their families. Why would they do a thing like that?" "Who knows why they do anything," Matt muttered. "Seanchan don't seem to need a reason for killing people. None I can figure out, anyway." Perrin tried not to look at the charred patch. "Huron, are you sure about Fane?" "Huron?" It had been hard to make the sniffer look at anything else since they entered the village. "Huron? What? Oh, Fane. Yes." Huron's nostrils flared, and right away he wrinkled his nose. "There's no mistaking that, even old as it is. Makes a murder all smell like roses. He passed through here all right, but I think he was alone. No Trollocs anyway. And if he had any dark friends with him, they hadn't been up to much lately." There was some sort of agitation up by the inn, people shouting and pointing. Not at Perrin and the other two, but at something Perrin could not see in the low hills east of the village. "Can we get the horses now?" Matt said. "That could be Seanchan." Perrin nodded, and they broke into a run for where they had tied their horses behind an abandoned house. As Matt and Huron disappeared around the corner of the house, Perrin looked back toward the inn and stopped in astonishment. The Children of the Light were riding into town, a long column of them. He leaped after the others. "White cloaks!" They wasted only an instant staring at him in disbelief before they were scrambling into their saddles. Keeping houses between them and the main street of the village, the 3 galloped out of the village westward, watching over their shoulders for pursuit. Ingtar had told them to avoid anything that might slow them down, and White Cloaks asking questions would certainly do that, even if they could manage answers that satisfied. Perrin kept an even closer watch than the other 2. He had his own reasons for not wanting to meet White Cloaks. "The axe in my hands. Light, but I wouldn't give to change that." The lightly wooded hills soon hid the village, and Perrin began to think maybe there was nothing chasing them after all. He reined in and motioned the other 2 to stop. When they did, eyeing him questioningly, he listened. His ears were sharper than they had once been, but he heard no sounds of hoofbeats. Reluctantly, he reached out with his mind in search of wolves. Almost immediately he found them. A small pack lying up for the day in the hills above the village they had just left. There were moments of astonishment so strong, he almost thought it was his own. These wolves had heard rumors, but they had not really believed there were two-legs who could talk to their kind. He sweated through the minutes it took to get past introducing himself. He gave the image of young Bull in spite of himself, and added his own smell, according to the custom among wolves. Wolves were great ones for formalities on first meetings, but finally he managed to get his question through. They really had no interest in any two-legs who could not talk to them, but at last they glided down to take a look, unseen by the dull eyes of the two-legs. After a time, images came back to him, what the wolves saw. White-cloaked men on horses crowding around the village, riding among the houses, riding around it, but none leaving, especially not westward. The wolves said all they smelled moving west was himself and two other two-legs with three of the hard-footed tall ones. Perrin let go the contact with the wolves gratefully. He was aware of Huron and Matt looking at him. They aren't following, he said. How can you be sure? Matt demanded. I am, he snapped, then more softly. I just am. Matt opened his mouth and closed it again, and finally said, well, if they aren't coming after us, I say we go back to Ingtar and get on Fane's trail. That dagger isn't coming any closer just standing here. We can't pick it up again this close to that village, Huron said. Not without risking running into White Cloaks. I don't think Lord Ingtar would appreciate that, and not Baron Sedine either. Perrin nodded. We'll follow it on a few miles anyway. But keep a close lookout. We can't be too far from Falman now. It won't do any good to avoid the White Cloaks and ride right into a Seanchan patrol. As they started out again, he could not help wondering what White Cloaks were doing there. Jeffram Bornhold peered down the village street, sitting his saddle while the Legion spread through the small town and surrounded it. There had been something about the heavy-shouldered man who had dashed out of sight, something that tickled his memory. Yes, of course. The lad who claimed to be a blacksmith. What was his name? Byar pulled up in front of him, hand on heart. The village is secured, my lord captain. Villagers in heavy sheepskin coats milled uneasily as white-cloaked soldiers herded them together near the overloaded carts in front of the inn. Crying children clung to their mothers' skirts, but no one looked defiant. Dull eyes stared out of the adult faces, waiting passively for whatever was going to happen. For that much, Bornhold was grateful. He had no real desire to make an example of any of these people, and no wish at all to waste time. Dismounting, he tossed his reins to one of the children. See that the men are fed, Byar. Put the prisoners in the inn with as much food and water as they can carry, and then nail all the doors and shutters closed. Make them think I am leaving some men to stand guard, yes? Byar touched his heart again, and wheeled his horse to shout orders. The herding began anew into the flat-roofed inn, while other children ransacked houses searching for hammers and nails. Watching the sullen faces that filed past him, Bornhold thought it should be 2 or 3 days before any of them found enough courage to break out of the inn and find there were no guards. 2 or 3 days was all he needed, but he did not intend to risk alerting the Seanchan to his presence now. Leaving enough men behind to make the questioners believe his entire legion was still scattered across Almouth Plain, he had brought more than 1,000 of the children, nearly the length of Toman Head, without giving alarm, so far as he knew. 3 skirmishes with Seanchan patrols had ended quickly. The Seanchan had grown used to facing already defeated rabble. The Children of the Light had been a deadly surprise. Yet the Seanchan knew how to fight like the Dark One's hordes, and he could not help remembering the one skirmish that had cost him better than 50 men. He was still not sure which of the 2 arrow-riddled women he had stared at afterwards had been the Aes Sedai. Fire! One of Bornhold's men handed him water in a pottery cup from one of the carts. It was icy in his throat. The gaunt-faced man swung down from his saddle. Yes, my lord captain. When I engage the enemy, Byar, Bornhold said slowly, you will not take part. You will watch from a distance, and you will carry word to my son of what happens. But my Lord Captain, that is my order, Child Byar, he snapped. You will obey, yes? Byar's back stiffened, and he stared straight ahead. As you command, my Lord Captain. Bornhold studied him for a moment. The man would do as he was told, but it would be better to give him another reason than letting Dane know how his father had died. It was not as if he did not have knowledge that was urgently needed in Amador. Since that skirmish with the Aes Sedai, was it one of them or both? 30 Shan-Chan soldiers, good fighters, and 2 women cost me twice the casualties they did. Since then, he no longer expected to live to leave Toman Head. In the small chance the Shan-Chan did not see to it, very likely the questioners would. When you have found my son, he should be with Lord Captain Eamon Valda near Tar Valon, and told him, you will ride to Amador and report to the Lord Captain Commander, Phaedron Nile personally, Child Byar. You will tell him what we have learned of the Shan-Chan. I will write it out for you. Be sure he understands that we can no longer count on the Tar Valon witches being content with manipulating events from the shadows. If they fight openly for the Shan-Chan, we will surely face them elsewhere. He hesitated. That last was the most important of all. They had to know.
Alright, everyone, I'm gonna call into this live for tonight.
Aes Sedai would march into battle. It gave him a sinking
I
feeling.
want to thank everyone for stopping by, and everyone who keeps stopping by. I appreciate all y'all's support. Till next time, everyone, y'all stay safe.